It's on now. Good morning and welcome to the 10:30 service at the Hershey Free Church. We are so glad you're here this morning. And for those of you watching online today, thank you very much for joining us. My name's Michelle Crick, and I'm here to give you a few announcements today. If anybody here is new, first time to the Hershey Free Church, we encourage you to reach out to our guest services team. You'll see them around, and as you came in, they're in the turquoise blue shirts. But what we would like you to do, if you would, is to fill out a Connect card. It's in the pew in front of you. And if you're watching online, you can go online to hfcinfo.com to fill out that information as well. And then someone from guest services can reach out to you to see if you have any questions about the church, anything you'd like to know, and can also help you get connected when you're ready and be more involved and know a little bit more about the church. If you're in person, there is a gift out in the lobby. If you're a first-time person, you can turn that in out there, and they have a little gift for you. We also have a monthly happening brochure that you would have seen when you came in today, and it's also online as well. You would find that at the hfcinfo.com at the online central hub. And that tells you all the information you want to know about the church, the next steps at the church, different things that are offered, how to get connected, and there's information on there to help you grow in your faith and how to live out that faith in your community. So we encourage you to take a look at that. Whether you're new or you've been here for a long time, that monthly happening is a wealth of information too on the happenings here. So as a church, we have partnered with Love Inc. and Downey Elementary School, and reach out to those places. And what I wanted to tell you about today is that a little bit about Love Inc. They work with local churches and the community with families in need and help find solutions for those families to situations that they might be going through, and they all do it through the love of Christ. So how we help is they have a personal care closet that needs to be supplied. And so online at hfcinfo.com, you will find some of the needs that they have at Love Inc. for the families that they serve. And if you'd like to supply some of those things, there is a box in the blue lobby that's right outside the doors as I'm pointing that way that you could drop those things off. We also serve Downey Elementary, and at different times of the year we have things that we do in outreach to the children, outreach to the families, and then to the teachers. So when you look at that online as well, you can see when different things are happening for that ministry. So this Friday night, we are camping here at Hershey Free Church, right here at the church. It's an evening of outdoor fun, so you can just come for that evening. There's going to be a family movie, there's going to be games, and there's going to be some storytelling around a campfire. There's going to be hot dogs, there's going to be s'mores, it's going to be a ton of fun for the family. So that we hope that you will join us. And I almost missed, there's going to be Capture the Flag too, which was so much fun when I used to help with youth. We had a blast playing that game. Also, we'd love to know if you're a good storyteller. There's going to be some storytelling around the campfire, and so we'd love for you to come and share some stories if you have them. If you'd like to stay overnight and you have an RV, you can bring that to stay overnight, or if you have a tent and you want to camp out that way. So it starts at 5 o'clock, but you can come whenever you're able, and we do ask you to sign up for that at hfcinfo.com so they know what to expect. So thanks again for joining us today.
All right, well, good morning. As we begin our worship service this morning, something I noticed as I was picking songs and rehearsing and practicing for this week was that all of the songs we're singing this morning have this one same word in it, and I'm sure it's a word you all know and have heard. It's the word mercy. And if you are a human being like me, you have most likely experienced mercy in some way, shape, or form throughout your life. And I think that's one of those things that, especially, I mean, for me, I think it's one of those things that's easy to take for granted. The amount of mercy that others, not only our Heavenly Father, but others in our lives show us mercy in certain in certain cases. And as I was thinking through that word, the story of the prodigal son came to mind. And if you know the story, just to kind of paraphrase it quickly, there's two sons. There's an older, typical oldest child who, is very obedient to his father, does what his father asks him to do. And then there's that younger son. I wouldn't know anything about that, but the younger son is kind of like, this isn't working for me. And so he says to his dad, I want my inheritance now. And his father says, that's not wise. And he's like, I don't care, I want it now. And so he leaves and he goes off and he does his own thing and he spends all his money and he ends up, as the story goes, literally living in a pig's pen. And he finally realizes sort of the error of his ways and he says, I've got to go home. And it picks up, and this is in Luke 15. It says, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son. And he threw his arms around him and he kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. And that father shows his son who left, who took all of his inheritance and spent it all, and he shows him mercy. And just like our Heavenly Father who shows us mercy on the daily, we are so, so blessed and fortunate to live in a world where we do have a God who loves us and who just wants our attention. The first song we're going to sing this morning, it's conveniently called His Mercy is More. The second verse starts, it says, what patience would wait as we constantly roam, and what Father so tender is calling us home. He welcomes the weakest, the vilest, the poor, and our sins are many, but His mercy is more. Y'all ready to worship? Would you stand with us and sing? Praise the Lord, His mercy is more, stronger than darkness, new every morning, our sins they are in, His mercy is more. Amen. You can have a seat.
Well, again, good morning. Thanks for being a part of Hershey Free Church this morning, whether in person or online. My name is George Davis, and I too want to just welcome you. Now, we're continuing our journey through the book of Proverbs. Today, we're going to be talking more about what Proverbs has to say about family and parenting and all that good stuff. And so this is a good week to give you an update on our core ministry. Core is our ministry to middle school and high school students. So we wanted to share with you this interview with two of our core leaders. So join me in watching this.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and I serve with Barb Nichols at Court with the Rising Sophomore Girls. I love it. I learn something new every time. The girls are very informed in the culture of what is cool, and so I learn from it every single time. But besides that, It's amazing. I've seen our girls grow a lot, and it's exciting to hear from them and all the things they share with us and things they talk about.
And I think I've seen how the girls come to core and they really enjoy being with each other and relaxing and having a safe place to just talk things through, as well as learn biblical principles and how that might be relevant to their life today. I just enjoy working with Danny. Pastor Nick is the one that put us together. I never knew her before that, and I've just really enjoyed her spirit and her understanding of the girls, and I just think we've complemented each other really well.
I've learned a lot. So this was your past first year with them as freshmen, and they really love Barb. I think I've learned a lot about being like slower to speak rather than just filling all the spaces with nervous chatter, and yeah, just how to be a better leader with the girls.
Students are facing huge challenges. They are really in a culture that is not, I guess it's post-Christianity, I'm not sure the official term, but they're really in a difficult culture, and so I think that's one of the reasons, again, why they value the time to come together and really reflect on the biblical principles, what Christianity is all about, so that they can put that in context with everything that they hear at school. They have difficult conversations with other students, and it's a difficult world that they're in.
Yeah, lots of social pressure. Now that everything can be recorded all the time, I think that in our ways, I'm not that much older than them, but like I definitely didn't have as much pressure with every moment's recorded, everything you say and do is online. Yeah, so a lot of our girls are looking to get involved, whether that's with helping out in Kids Step, with the elementary students, preschool students, and even the nursery. Something they just expressed desire for is how to give back. Some of our girls have also helped out with leadership. I think it was 2 years ago, but some of them were like the leadership in court. And so it was really nice to see them as middle schoolers doing that. And I've also seen them be able to talk more. They're not as afraid to share hard things with us, or are less nervous to share things with us than they were at the beginning of the freshman year or even in 6th grade.
I think that God's been at work in terms of what I've seen them learn. In some cases, I've been surprised by what they didn't know, and in many cases, I've been surprised by the questions they've asked and what we don't know.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we're doing follow-up with Pastor Nick or even texting him during our conversations to get some help in terms of knowledge. But at the same time, I don't want people to feel intimidated by that, because we're not expected to know all the answers, and a lot of being a core volunteer is about just showing up and caring, and the questions can be answered as we go. It's not like you have to come in and know it all.
Yeah, that'd be super unrealistic.
I would say praying for the students that are coming to core, and also for the volunteers that are there with them, but also the kids that aren't at core that desperately need core. Sometimes as we're talking through some of the challenges at school with the girls, we actually talk about praying for some of the students at school. And so in terms of praying, the kids at core, the volunteers at core, but also the kids not at core, and also for more core leaders to come alongside and help.
One way that you could be praying for our students is that they can feel comfortable to be themselves at school, at their sporting activities, whatever clubs they're in. Something we talk about with our girls is that they can just be themselves with us, and it'd be nice to see them be comfortable being themselves at school. I think a lot of people have an opinion of what a Christian is or what a Christian should look like, and our girls love Jesus, and I think that if they can just express that at school in the way they feel comfortable, that would be a really good blessing to their peers and to their teachers and everyone around them, just to show Jesus' love.
I too want to thank Barb and Danny just for sharing part of their story, but also for their work, investing in our students, investing in our families. I know some of you are involved in CORE as well, so thank you for your service in the life of our church community. Speaking of families, the newest addition to my family is, oh no, this is Winston. He's a 6-month-old English lad. Do not let the eyes fool you. There are days when he needs to be on a terrorist watch list. And the truth is, if you talk to my family, if you talk to Rose, my wife, or my son Mark, who's home from college, they will tell you, and this is true, Dad has not been as consistent in correcting Winston as we have, and that's true. And as a result, this little guy sometimes is much better behaved for them than he is for me. And we had one of those scenarios this week where that happened. And at one point, my son looks at me, my 21-year-old son looks at me, and he goes, Dad, you've been a parent for more than 20 years. You should have this down by now. And he's got a point. I think it's like, yeah, you're kind of right. There's some things I should have down by now. Some of you are parents here, and have there been moments when you've said, I should have this down by now? Maybe some of you are kids and you think about your parents. My parents should have this down. They still don't have it figured out, right? They don't get this. The reality is this journey of being a parent can be a very humbling journey. And over the years, as I've talked with parents in a lot of situations, I've realized that for most of us, at some point in the journey of parenting, at some point we feel like absolute failures. Even this week, I was having a conversation with a young dad, 2 small kids. We were talking about this journey of being a dad. And I said, so what scares you the most right now about being a father? And he said, well, I'm just not sure I'm doing enough. I'm just not sure I'm doing it right. And so we talked a little bit more about that. But this could be a challenging role that we have, and we see the ups and downs, and we experience at times the tensions in family, and we look back at times and say, I wish I'd done this differently. This is all part of this journey of parenting. Well, this morning, as I said, we're continuing our look topically at the book of Proverbs. Now, in reality, Proverbs in ancient Israel was basically a book written to young men who would ultimately assume positions of leadership in their communities, in their country. And yet, even though that's the primary target, I think Proverbs has a lot to say for us today about the journey of parenting. So particularly for those of us who are parents, for those of us who are grandparents, for those of us who at some point see parenting as part of our future, I want to invite you to, let's just look at this book together. And I want to unpack the wisdom of Proverbs in this area of parenting simply by asking a couple of questions. And the first question that I want to ask, and just think about this, the first question that I want to ask is, so what is the goal of parenting? I mean, what's really the goal of parenting? Maybe you're a kid and say, here's my goal for my parents. But if you're a parent, what's the goal of parenting? I realize for some of us, particularly, for instance, when our kids are younger and it's really crazy, it's really busy, sometimes the goal is just survival, right? We got through the day, everybody got fed, nobody died, everybody's in bed. It's a good day, it's a win, and we need to celebrate that. But if you're a parent, regardless of what season you're in, what would you describe as the goal of parenting? There are different ways we can answer that. Let me just give you a couple. I think the reality is for some parents, it really seems like the goal is just parenting toward their child's happiness, right? We're just going to, I want my child to do well, and I'm going to do everything I can to make that possible. I want to pave the path so they can do well, so they can exceed. I want to give them good opportunities. And ultimately, in some ways, even for some parents, it feels like we're wrapping our entire lives around our kids. So for some parents, it's just like we're just parenting toward their happiness. And of course, my guess is at some point you've seen what that can produce, because in some people, what it produces are individuals that are entitled and lack resilience. And maybe most of us would say, no, I want to go deeper than that. And then for some, I think we think about parenting, well, I want them to be good, responsible adults, right? Maybe you think of it this way, I want to parent toward their habits. And I want them to develop a good work ethic. I want them to develop responsibility. I want them to be good citizens. And I think for those of us who are followers of Christ, we want them to become Christians, and we want to see good habits. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to really foster good habits, certain behavior. I want to give my kids certain opportunities. I want them to be involved in church. We're going to do sports. And as they get older, sometimes we put a certain amount of pressure on our kids. You need to do well in these areas. You got to work hard academically so you get in the right college. But what we're trying to do, we're trying to develop good habits in the lives of our kids. Now, there's much to be commended there. But can I suggest that Proverbs challenges us as parents to think even deeper? Beyond just kind of superficial superficial happiness, beyond external habits, Proverbs encourages us to think about the heart. In Proverbs chapter 4, there's this very familiar verse that we read. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Now, in reading that verse, it's important to understand that this is in one of the sections of Proverbs where a father is talking to his young son. And this is dad who wants the best for his kid. And there's so many good things we want for our kids. But it's almost like the dad looks at his kid and he says, I want you to do well in school. Man, it's great that you're engaged in sports, and I'm so proud of the things you've learned as a member of a team and the success you've had. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to do in the workplace, and I'm so thrilled about that, and I'm going to cheer you on all along the way. But above all else, as important as all of that is, above all else, guard your heart. And what the dad is saying through this statement, I think, is this is the ultimate desire and goal of my parenting. Is the transforming work at the very core of who you are. Because that's really what this whole concept of heart is getting to. It's the core of who we are. It's who we are at our deepest level. But here's where this really becomes challenging as parents. In fact, this is where this whole journey of parenting can really become unsettling, particularly for those of us who are Christian parents. Because we know from the pages of Scripture that what our kids need, what all of us need, is the transforming work of God at the very core of who we are. And that's the work of the gospel. That's the forgiveness, the new life, the transformation that only God can bring through the work of Jesus Christ. It's the work of the gospel that we become a part of when we put our faith and trust in Him. And what that means for me as a parent is this. When it comes to the work of the heart in my kids' lives, I can't control that. I can't manufacture it. I can't make it happen. I can enforce external behavior. But I can't control what's going on in the inside of the lives of my 3 sons. And that becomes, right? Oh my goodness, that becomes unsettling. And for some parents, in response to this, in their unhealthy ways in which we respond to try to get control of that, we can parent out of fear, and we can parent out of shame or just sheer reward, and we're parenting because we don't have this control. And And sometimes we cling to a passage like Proverbs 22, right? Train up a child in the way he should go. And we treat it as if that's an ironclad promise. If I just do A and B, then C will result. But remember, the Proverbs are not ironclad promises. They're not guarantees. They're general observations about life. And I think one of the important steps of effective parenting is understanding what I cannot do. Now, you say, well, then what do we do? Right? If this is the ultimate goal, but if it's ultimately a goal that I can't control or manipulate, then what do I do? Well, I think the book of Proverbs would answer that question this way. Right? The book of Proverbs, I think, acknowledges, well, I can't control my kid's heart. But what I can do is I can walk the way of wisdom and invite them to join me. I can walk the way of wisdom. I can walk this journey of faith and kind of through teaching, through interaction, through the life of our home and our involvement as family. I can do different things to invite, to nurture, to encourage them to be part of this journey as well. So how do I do that? This is what I can do. How do I do that? Well, in answering that question, what I want to do real quickly is I want to just give you four themes that I think occur in the book of Proverbs that are relevant to us as parents. And in giving you these four themes, they're easy to remember because they all begin with the letter L. So here's the first L, and not surprisingly, it's the word what? It's the word love. In Proverbs, we read this in Proverbs chapter 4. Remember, Proverbs 4 includes this long section where a father is talking to his son. And I love what the dad says early in the passage. He says this, "For I too was a son to my father, still tender and cherished by my mother." Now he's about to give his son advice and counsel, and that theme recurs throughout the book. But in doing that, it's not just I'm going to stand back here and lecture at you, right? I'm going to stand back here and tell you all the things you're doing wrong, all the things you need to do. It's, you know what? I was once a son too to my dad. And I was tender. I had lots to learn. There are a lot of mistakes in my future. I was just where you were. And what I think you find here in the opening of this section of the book of Proverbs, it's really, I see this as a statement of endearment. This is the dad looking at his son and saying, look, I'm not just going to tell you what to do. I'm not just going to lecture at you. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm in this with you. I'm going to walk this journey with you. I am for you. You know, I think generations later about Paul the Apostle talking about parenting and again addressing fathers in Ephesians chapter 6. And what does he say? He says, look, you need to train your kids and you need to develop your kids, but you don't exasperate them. And you avoid being parents of exasperation when you love your kids. So I think foundational being on this journey of wisdom, this journey of faith, and inviting my kids to join me is our home, our relationships there needs to be genuine love there. Now, we could spend days and days talking about what that looks like, and there's nothing new that I have to share with you. You know what it is, and you know when it's absent. But let me just remind you of two things. Two things you already know, but two things that are absolutely critical for us as parents and loving our kids and communicating that love. And those two things are these: time and attention. Time and attention. Now, as parents, one of the things we sometimes talk about the importance of quality time. And I get that, and I'm all for that. But here's what I've come to understand, kind of after, 2+ decades of being a parent. I believe in quality time. I just never know when it's going to happen. I don't. I mean, sometimes it's just surprising conversation. Sometimes it's unexpected moments where it just feels like, man, that was a moment for a significant interaction or significant conversation. I remember when our kids were little, and we do the family devotions, and our goal was once a week. And I realized some families seem to master this. We were never that good at it. It's kind of, I know I'm the pastor, but we didn't. It was always, sometimes it was kind of a trial by fire. Sometimes it felt like World War III was going to break out because they were so busy. Sometimes it's like, okay, we're done. We're going to close in prayer and let's just all get to bed. But there were other times where it was like, oh, that was good. But I just never knew when those times would come. And over the years, as our sons got older, there were intentional things that, I sought to do. I mean, we moved here to Pennsylvania, and we discovered Sheets. And so Sheets runs became a part of my kids growing up. And, sometimes it was just a good way to check in. Hey, let's do a Sheets run and, grab some fried food, and we'd just sit there and talk. Now my kids are older, and they realize that food is no longer good for you. So we're going out to eat at more expensive places. It's gotten more costly to have these conversations. Likewise, when our sons hit their senior year and they had that first period off, once a week we go to breakfast and we just talk about, okay, what's this transition, what's it going to look like? Are you leaving high school? And, let's just talk. What are you excited about? What are you scared of? So we just had those conversations. And I've got to be honest with you. Sometimes we go out and it's like, oh, that was a really good conversation. Other times it was, hey, we just chatted about life. There was nothing real deep, nothing real spiritual, nothing really profound. And I never knew when those moments were going to come. So there's just no shortcut for the importance of time. But in some ways, I think the time together isn't that important if there's not also attention. Over the last week, I've had different conversations with young adults in our church and students, kind of just talking about this whole experience of family and parenting. I wanted to kind of get some of their insight into what I was sharing this weekend. And so when we were talking about kind of communicating love, one of the things that came through loud and clear, and this was a recurrent theme in these conversations, I experience love when my parents listen. I experience love when my parents listen. And in different conversations, I tried to unpack that. Okay, what do you mean by listen, right? And, because, let's be honest, sometimes what we mean by listen is this. You've listened to me if you agree with me. And sometimes in parenting, that's just not going to happen, right? And so I remember asking I said, okay, so how do you know if your parents are listening? What makes you feel heard? And here was a response, and I thought that was really helpful. I feel heard when they ask good questions. And, a couple of days later, as I was processing that, I was like, oh my goodness. I think back just even certain conversations I've had with my own sons. And times at which it's just been so easy for me to go into lecture mode, right? Some topic comes up, and instead of kind of exploring it more with my son, well, this is what you need to do. Or no, you shouldn't think that way. Here's where you're wrong. Or that line that puts death to any parental conversation, when I was your age, blah, blah, right? Right? There's a conversation killer, right? And I realized, oh my goodness, it can be, at times, it's been so easy for me just to go into lecture mode, and I'm not listening. So what if instead of saying, okay, well, let me tell you exactly what to do, what if I said, well, just tell me a little bit more. How are you thinking about this? How are you feeling about this? And what if I worked harder at listening? Because this is an important part of communicating love. And for those, let me just speak particularly to parents, middle school and high school. Let me tell you one reason this is absolutely mission critical for you right now. And that is this. Over the last decade, there has been a clear uptick in the level of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thinking among teenagers and young adults in this country. Now, we can have all sorts of debates and conversation about why that is happening, and there are different approaches, different theories. But wherever it's happening, it's important for us to understand that it is happening. And it's not just a big statistic, it's happening in the lives of our kids. It's happening in the lives of our church families, in the lives of kids that are part of CORE. And you see, if I'm just a parent I'm just concerned about behavior and habits, I'm going to miss really seeking to understand what's going on in my son's heart. And if I'm just focused on kind of behavior and habits, there may be ways that I'm not really communicating love well because I'm not listening. And I say that as a dad who can look back to earlier seasons in my kid's life and say, here's some things I missed because I wasn't listening well. So I just really want to encourage you as parents to think in those terms. Okay, very quickly, let me mention a couple of other things. So love is an important dimension of this journey of parenting. Secondly, learning. I mean, when we read Proverbs, there's this clear expectation that our homes, our families are to be places of learning. Let me just read you Proverbs, let me get down to my notes here. Proverbs 4:1, again in this section of a father speaking to his son. Listen, my son, to a father's instruction. Pay attention and gain understanding. I mean, just as you read Proverbs, it's clear that part of this journey of parenting is passing along the faith, passing along knowledge, passing along wisdom to our kids. Even at the beginning of the book, the author says, listen to your father's instruction and do not forsake your mother's teaching. But how do I do that? I mean, what does that look like? I actually had this conversation with one of my sons this week. Just as I said, what do you think? As parents, how do we help our kids kind of embrace the reality of the gospel and embrace this journey of following of Jesus? How do we help people do that? And he made this interesting comment. He said, Dad, he said, they need to see that Christianity is attractive. And I thought about that, and then it really struck me that in different ways, this is actually what the book of Proverbs is doing, right? The book of Proverbs is inviting us into this journey of wisdom. It's a journey that is ultimately a relationship with God, right? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And inviting us onto this journey of the wisdom over and over again, the book of Proverbs says, look, above all else, this is what you need. That other stuff is valuable, it's meaningful, but this is what you need. You need wisdom. You need this relationship. This is what living well looks like. And as I thought about that, it really led to this question for those of us who are parents. As a parent, am I helping my child, my kids, see the beauty, the wonder, the impact of the gospel? I think along these lines in Proverbs chapter 3, as the father instructs his son, there's this statement that let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. And I think for us today, kind of the application of that is our families, our homes, our relationships with our kids need to be places where our kids see the love and faithfulness of God. My home needs to be a place where in different ways, my kids are reminded they are deeply loved and deeply known by God. And furthermore, it needs to be a place where now that they've started this journey of following Jesus, it needs to be a place where they come to understand not only that they are deeply loved, that they are people who are experiencing God's love and faithfulness, that love and faithfulness is now to shape how they engage the world, to shape how they engage relationships, to shape how they engage their work and their responsibilities. So am I encouraging my kids to see just, there's just a wonder and amazement, a beauty to the good news of Jesus Christ that invites us into this relationship where we can experience his forgiveness, his renewal, his new life. I mean, is my parenting just about, okay, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to avoid, or is there this deeper reality of the wonder of what God is doing? So there needs to be learning. Thirdly, I think in the book of Proverbs, this journey of parenting, not only does it involve love, creating an atmosphere of love, not only does it involve learning, passing on the faith and the wisdom that comes with it, it also involves limits. It involves discipline. And the book of Proverbs doesn't shy away from talking about the significance of discipline. Proverbs 19:18, discipline your children, for in that there is hope. But for us as parents, I think there are two things that in this reality of discipline that we need to keep in mind, two things that we are really wanting to communicate to our kids. First of all, there's the reality of consequences, right? We want our kids to understand there are consequences to the choices that they make. Again, Proverbs, in essence, says you're either on this wisdom road or you're on the road of foolishness, and there will be consequences along the way if you choose to move in that other direction. And we want our kids to understand that as well. They need to see the consequences of the choices that they're making. But not only do they need to see the consequences, they need to see our compassion. They need to understand that even in these moments of discipline, we are still for them. We still love them. We want God's best for them. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes, and let's be honest, as parents, it's so easy to discipline out of anger. It's so easy to discipline out of frustration. And even as we talk about the reality of discipline, I think we've got to acknowledge, and sometimes we're going to go even through seasons in these relationships where there's tension, and it's hard, and it is messy, and it is complicated. And that's part of the journey as well. And we can't shy away from discipline simply because it becomes complicated, because Proverbs says this is part of the journey of walking in the way of faith, walking in the way of wisdom, and inviting our kids to be a part of that as well. Now, there's one other thing that I want you to see from Proverbs, and that is this. Not only does this way of wisdom in parenting involve love and learning and limits, it also involves lifestyle. It involves lifestyle. Let me show you one other verse from Proverbs. Again, Proverbs chapter 4. Notice this, I instruct you in the way of wisdom and lead you along straight paths. Notice the implication. I'm not just going to tell you where to go, I'm going to walk this journey with you. And I think one of the realities of parenting in the way of wisdom is recognizing that to invite our kids to join us on the journey, we need to be on the journey. And I realize sometimes as parents, we get all uptight about the different cultural influences that are now speaking into our kids, and particularly as they get older, it feels like we've got less control, and all the cultural stuff from social media to music and everything. It just feels like all of that is now speaking into my kids' lives, and it's scary because I feel like I'm losing kind of the influence that I once had. I still remember when our kids were learning to drive, and one of them would be driving, they'd plug in their phone, and all of a sudden we're under their playlist, and my first question would be, who is this? And that was always the joke. Now, what's the name of this band again? And so I was getting introduced to all kinds of new music. To be honest with you, some of it I really liked. In fact, even to this day, one of our sons, who now lives in another part of the country, I jump into his car, he'll plug in his phone, and sometimes as he's kind of scrolling through his playlist, he said, okay, Dad, this one's for you. And it will be Mumford & Sons, because that he introduced me to Mumford & Sons. But some of that other stuff is like, oh my goodness, who is this band? And what about those lyrics? We had all these conversations, and all of it was just a reminder that there's so many other factors now speaking into my kid's life. And that could be scary. But the reality is this, and we need to keep this in mind. even though all those other factors are at work, all those other influences are at work in the lives of our kids, the greatest influence in my kid's life in terms of faith and spirituality will be me. Christian Smith is a researcher, professor at Notre Dame who has been writing on the whole issue of faith in young adults and the transmission of faith for really a generation. And in his most recent study, his most recent work, as he's talking about this, he says, and I quote, "The most important factor in the intergenerational transmission of faith is the parents." Folks, we have an important role to play. Now, in saying that, let me just also say, as a church, we don't want you to feel like you're out on an island on it. We want to partner with you. And it's encouraging even to see some of the things our family ministry team is working on right now. For instance, for those of you who parent younger kids, we've got an elective coming up in the fall. For those kind of with middle school kids, over the next academic year, we're going to have 2 family forums that deal with this issue of anxiety and depression. And there's certain things we're working on. Where our team is even working on kind of preparing some materials for you to help think about the spiritual milestones that can take place in the life of your kid during those formative years of from birth to 18, and ways we want to partner with you in that. So we're all in terms of working with you and being a church family that works with you. But understand, you're at the front of the pack when it comes to influence in this area in your kid's life. And what does that influence look like? Well, it does look like just the way you live your life. Our kids see what's important to us. Our kids see where we invest our time and we invest our resources. When we get involved in the church community and then they get to see other families and build other relationships, they are seeing the value that we are placing on this. Furthermore, it's not just kind of the way we live, but it's how we talk about it. When we have conversations just about, what's going on with life and how to think about this, and sometimes, how to think about this from a Christian perspective, those conversations are influential. And at times, we need to be open to the fact, particularly as our kids get older, that those conversations are going to include just some heavy questions, doubts, disagreements. And we're going to have to be willing to kind of engage those conversations. For one of our sons, high school and much of his college experience was a season of profound doubt and questions and uncertainties. And some people told him, well, you shouldn't doubt, just believe. And that was not helpful. That just created more stress. And so that also became a season just with lots of conversation, lots of discussion, even reading some things together. And ultimately, it became a season that God has woven into his faith journey. So our lifestyle is an important part of being on this journey and inviting our kids to join us. So I think this is the wisdom that Proverbs has for us. It challenges us to parent towards the heart, right? Not simply behavior and habits, but to parent towards the heart. And the truth is, I can't control that, and we need to acknowledge that, but I can walk this journey and invite my kids to be a part of it as well. And I do that through love. I do it through learning. I do it through limits, and I do it through lifestyle. Now, I realize, in kind of wrapping this up, I think for many of us, it's easy to walk away from this conversation defeated, right? You'll notice I didn't ask you to kind of score yourself in each of these areas, because that could be demotivating. But I realized, even as we were talking about these different dimensions of what Proverbs encourages, I think For those of us who are parents, perhaps at different points, we say, oh, I wish I had done that differently, or I haven't done that well. And I think all of us feel that way. And the truth is, as a parent, at some point, you will accumulate regret. That's part of the journey. But remember, Proverbs challenges us to think about life as a journey. Proverbs invites us to this road of wisdom. And the reality is, and Proverbs, I think, communicates this, if you've gotten off the road, whatever that has looked like, just now's the time to get back on. Even as I mentioned a few moments ago, I can look back to, certain seasons in our son's high school years and just say, here's some places where I missed what was going on. Here's some things where I was not listening well. But you know what? Now that they're younger adults, we're just having some different conversations. And we're talking about some things we really didn't talk about much before. And, I would say as a dad, I kind of got off the road, but we kind of figured out, okay, how do I get back? And what does that look like? And how do we move forward? And at times I've even had to tell my sons, I'm sorry I missed this then. I don't want to miss it now. And that's part of our story. And so, for you as a parent, if in any way this has kind of been defeating or demotivating, let me just get back on the path. And maybe kind of a tangible way to do that. And again, this kind of depends on kind of the season of parenting, the age of your kids, but just think about, okay, how can I have some check-in conversations with my kids? Maybe, we just kind of, as our kids have gotten older, maybe we just kind of got in the habit of, well, what's going on at school? Did you get your homework done? And what, who's going to get the ride? And we're just exchanging information. But in our communication, we're not really talking about anything deeper than that. So how might you change that next conversation? What if it's, what if it's just even after today, just, we talked about this at church, so I'm just curious, how are you doing? What's really encouraging you right now? Kind of what's scary to you right now? What's bothering you right now? How might you kind of redirect one of those conversations? And let me just say to students who are here, if your parent kind of takes that step, just be honest. I realize sometimes we really hold back because we feel like if I told them what I'm really thinking, they're going to be disappointed in me, or if I told them what I was really thinking, I'm going to get grounded, or I'm going to get, but I realize this can be scary on your part. But students, just be willing to kind of step into that space. And likewise, parents, if your kids are willing to do that, do not shut them down. Do not go into lecture mode. Do not do something like, right? Let's just have the conversation. Because we're on this journey. And we're not going to get it all right. And some of us, in so many ways, we're in process. But we've been invited to be on this journey. And Jesus promises to be with us every step of the way as his followers. So what does that look like? So parents, I challenge you to just have those kinds of conversations. And if you really want to be daring, use this question. Ask your son or daughter, is there anything about our relationship you would like to be different? And just listen. Just listen. Don't be defensive. Just listen. Because remember, the book of Proverbs is inviting on this journey of wisdom. And we know through the overall storyline of the Bible that this journey of wisdom is ultimately now the journey made possible through Jesus Christ. And so as a parent, I want to be on that journey. And I can't control, manipulate, or manufacture that in the lives of my sons. particularly now that we're in 4 time zones and scattered across the country. But still, in different ways, I can be on that journey. And I can encourage and invite and support them in being on that journey as well, with the confidence that Jesus will be with us every step of the way. Let's pray together. Gracious God, I know sometimes as we talk about parenting and family dynamics, in any setting, there are people under stress right now, there are families under stress. And that's true in our church community. I just heard too many stories. And so, Father, I pray for those of us who are parents. I pray that this morning would just really encourage us to be on this journey and to do what we can do our part in inviting our kids to join us along the way. And Father, likewise, I know there's some students here that maybe there's just some stuff going on and there hasn't been good conversation. And frankly, maybe they're here and they'd say, my parents just won't listen, or they won't get it. And Father, particularly in those situations, I just pray that there could really be some good conversation. And I pray maybe in the midst of the messiness and maybe some of the frustration, maybe even in the midst of the hurt, I pray that just your grace could break through in powerful ways. And Father, I pray that in some of these situations, even though we don't always get family right, we don't get parenting right, we don't get being a kid right, I pray in the midst of all that messiness and sometimes ugliness, your grace could just break through to remind us of the transforming work of the gospel. And so we thank you that Jesus is for us. And we thank you that through the work of the gospel, we can experience your love and your faithfulness. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Since all of this is rooted in the gospel, we're going to close this morning with the celebration of communion. So you should have gotten one of those cups. I got in without one, so I'm going to get one. You might want to just go ahead and open that, and the top flap to get the wafer, and then the bottom to get the juice. Thank you. And as you do that, and as our worship team is going to lead us now, particularly for those of us who are parents, as we think about our families, can we just use this moment of singing together to be reminded that this journey of parenting is ultimately rooted in the life that Jesus Christ makes possible. It's rooted in his grace, in his forgiveness, in his new life. And could we just let that encourage us and energize us this morning? So let's sing together.
Like a vow that is tested, like a covenant of old. Your love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizon, with mercy for today. Faithful you have been, and faithful you will be. You pledge yourself to me, and it's why I sing your praise.
So even as we have sung about the wonder of what Christ has done for us, let's now celebrate that together. And as we think about this journey of wisdom that we've been invited to be on, this journey of following Christ, and as parents, this journey we want our kids to be a part of as well, let's be reminded that it is rooted in the work of the one who has died on our behalf. It's rooted in the one who said, "This is my body, it's broken for you. This is my blood, it's shed for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Again, I want to thank you for being a part of this series as we continue working our way through the themes in Proverbs. And as you go, just a reminder that our ushers are going to be at the door to receive donations for our Compassion Fund. This just helps us meet the physical needs of people in our church and our community, so thank you for being a part of that. I'm also going to invite members of our prayer team to be here at the end of the service, and we'll be here at the front. And if there's something we can pray with you about or just ways that we can encourage you, we'd love to be able to do that. So now, having celebrated the work of Jesus Christ, let's go in the reality that it's this work that makes possible the journey of wisdom. And it's this work that, as parents, empowers and equips us to invite our kids to be a part of that journey all along the way. Amen.